what is going on, everybody? Hope everybody is enjoying their weekend so far. And we are back for another edition of SEC Talk. Only a couple more editions of the football, and then we will dive into more of our spring and winter sports with basketball and baseball just right around the corner. But we did have two semifinal games with one of our SEC representatives in Ole Miss. And for the third straight season, the SEC will be left out of the national championship, as it will be Indiana in Miami clashing down there in sunny Miami, Florida. So definitely looking forward to previewing that. We'll give you a little early taste of that match, and we'll get into more of an in-depth breakdown of that on next week's show, as that's really going to be our only topic heading into next week. But we'll recap our semifinals. And since we do have a week in between the national championship, what better way than to review the 2025 SEC football season? Was it a good one? Probably not for the conference, as the conference just continues to do terrible, especially in postseason play. But there is definitely some bright spots by some teams. We'll get into all that. Wade, how was your weekend? And are you ready to dive into, I guess, really putting a bow on the 2025 SEC football season?
Yeah, I know we always say it, but it sure does go by fast. I was thinking about that today because we had breakfast with some friends, and the last time we met at that place, it was Labor Day, and college football was about to kick off, or it just had. LSU had just beat Clemson, and we were on top of the world.
Yep.
And flash forward, 4 months, and we're there again today, and, well, it's almost over. So sure does go by fast. Like you said, an up and down year for the SEC. 4 teams making the playoff, but ultimately not getting to the championship game. Certainly disappointing for the conference as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely dive into all that. Before we go right into our college football playoff semifinals recap, as always, to start off the show, we want to remind you, if you have any questions, feel free to leave us a comment in the comment section down below. We love the interactivity between our fans, both on Facebook and our YouTube. Like I always mention, we are live on both of those platforms. So even if it's after the show, if you have any comments or questions, I know that really there's no questions to be asked about the SEC, but maybe overall, how would you grade your team's season? Was it a failure? Was it a success? Let us know down in the comments, and we'll get to it here as we go through the show here. So now let's dive into our first of 2 semifinal games. The setup was a Thursday night and a Friday night game, so we'll kick it off with the Verbo Fiesta Bowl out there in Arizona between number 10 seed Miami versus number 6 seed Ole Miss. Miami, their road, how they got here in the first round, a 10-3 win over Texas A&M, and another defensive game against Ohio State in the quarterfinals as they took down the Buckeyes, a team that I think a lot of people had making it back to the national championship game. Ole Miss, on the other hand, they beat Tulane, who was the number 11 seed at the time in the bracket, and then they pulled off the upset against the number 3 seed, I believe, the Georgia Bulldogs. So Ole Miss in Miami ended up pulling this one out at the very end, 31-27. And we did get a blowout, but this was definitely the game of the week here in the college football because you only had 2 games. All the bowl games are pretty much over and done with. But this was a defensive battle here in the first half. Miami did take an early lead going into the break, 17-13. You did see a big run by Kawan Lacey. That was one of the big plays that you saw in the first half. You didn't really see too much of Kawan Lacey outside of that. I believe he had a hamstring injury, so that very limited him. So you did see a lot of the backup running back in Logan Diggs. But Trinidad Chambliss, his run, terrific season just continues because he balled out once again against one of the best defensive fronts, in my opinion, led by Ruben Bain in Miami. And Ole Miss's defense really stepped up, at least in the first half, maybe not in the second half. We saw a lot of these offensive get a lot of big plays. You saw a big play to Malachi Toney. And then Deshaun Stribling also had some big catches, same with Caden Lee. So it was just a back-and-forth affair. Ole Miss took a late lead with 2 minutes left. And then Miami, with 18 seconds left, Carson Beck ran it in from the 8. And Ole Miss and Trinidad Chambliss, they had an opportunity. They got down the field pretty quickly. And with 5 seconds left, Trinidad Chambliss heaved it up to one of his receivers. Was it a pass interference? Was it not? Didn't ultimately matter in the end, as Miami survives and advances yet again, and they will get a trip now to their home stadium in Hard Rock Stadium. So that's definitely going to be a fun environment for them. But it's crazy to think, like a couple of weeks back, we were talking about the debate, like should it be Miami or should it be Notre Dame? And ultimately, the head-to-head decided that factor. And look at Miami, one of the last teams into this field at 12, is now one of the last two teams standing. But Ole Miss, definitely a heartbreaking loss for them. But for an Ole Miss fan, I mean, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year, to be honest with you. Like last year was really supposed to be their year to go on this type of run. So kudos to Ole Miss. A-plus season for them, in my opinion. I know that it ended the way that you didn't hope to. Obviously, you want your team to win a national championship every single year. But if I would have to grade this Ole Miss season overall, especially with how it went down, A-plus season for the Rebs. Bright future ahead with Pete Golden now taking over. But for Miami, it is now a trip back to the 305. So, Wade, with all that being said, what are your overall thoughts on this game? I guess, like myself, maybe put a bow on Ole Miss's season.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss, I think you could say they had the most successful season of any SEC team. They're the last team standing. They took down the SEC champion in Georgia, avenging their only loss of the season besides this one. So, yeah, a really good season for Ole Miss. I told everybody I was high about the high on the Pete Golding hire in the immediate wake of Lane Kiffin leaving, and I think that so far that's proven to be a good move. It definitely propelled them on this run, and I think he got the guys to believe in his vision and to believe that they were more than their former coach. So a really nice run here for Ole Miss. I mean, it looked like they were going to get beat up pretty early in this one, and then just like the Georgia game, they stormed back. The only problem was they gave Carson Beck a little too much time, and man, he was on the money late in that one. And not for nothing though, Trinidad Chambliss gave it a shot there at the end. I mean, that was about as good of a 3-play sequence as you could ask, starting from your own 20-yard line. They certainly did make it interesting. It's a shame they were down by 4 because, if it was a 3-point game or something, I think that we very well could have been going to some overtime. But
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Miami, again, they nailed the transfer portal at quarterback. They've done that a few years in a row now. And led by that really good defense. It's a no small feat to hold this Ole Miss bunch under 30. So kudos to Miami, and that was with some backup cornerbacks and safeties and defensive ends in there. So I mean, this team's just really deep. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against Indiana, two of the best defensive lines that we're going to ever see play against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely going to be a fun matchup. But Miami advances on to the national championship. Really good season, like Whit and I mentioned, for the Rebs. And now let's go on to the next semifinal. This was a rematch of two Big Ten powers between number 5 seed Oregon and number 1 seed Indiana. How Oregon got here? Well, they pretty much blew out James Madison in the first round, and they shut out a really nice and talented Texas Tech team, 23-0 in the Orange Bowl. Indiana, pretty simple. They only had to win one game, and it was a beatdown against Alabama, and another beatdown here as this game was over by the first play. The first play was a pick 6 by Indiana. You knew right then and there that this was just not going to be a pretty performance by Oregon. They were able to respond with a 75-yard drive to make it 7-7, but that was as close as we were going to get because they've got Indiana got a touchdown. It feels like pretty much every possession. The rest of the way, Fernando Mendoza just continues to show the nation why he was the best quarterback this season. Elijah Surratt was a dog. Number 80, I believe his last name is Baxter. Indiana fans, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this Indiana team was just a complete wagon. Like their defense, like you mentioned, like their secondary is elite. Their defensive front is elite. And their offense is just one of the best in the nation. But credit to Indiana fans because it felt like 95% to 5%. Do Oregon fans?
I was surprised by that.
even more. Like they traveled really well for the Orange Bowl against Miami, but I didn't see anybody. It was just all crimson in the stands. So kudos to the Indiana Hoosiers faithful. But this Indiana team, I mean, they are undefeated. Not really too many teams played close. I mean, the last time that these two teams played, like I mentioned, just previewing this game, like the score was close on paper, but that game was just never close. And then Ohio State, other than that, was, and then Penn State too. So those are the only three teams to really keep it close. But Indiana, like I mentioned, like they're going to have to beat themselves at this point if they do want to lose, because it feels like Kirk Cignetti, the job that he's done. I mean, this is only year number 2 for a program that had the most overall losses in FBS history. I mean, they were like 2-10 before Kirk Cignetti got here in his first season. They made it to the college football playoff, ended up losing to Notre Dame, and now here they are looking like a powerhouse. And this Indiana team ain't going away. Like looking at their transfer portal and recruiting class for the next couple of years, they're going to be sitting pretty and right back here at the number 1 seed. I mean, they got Josh Hoover coming in. They got Nick Marsh, the talented wide receiver from Michigan State. There's really nothing to be said about Oregon. This was just a complete dominance. I mean, Oregon just never stand a chance in this game. We will see what Dante Moore decides, if he decides to return to college for one more year or goes to the NFL. If I'm Dante Moore's agent after that performance, you're bringing your ass back to Eugene after that because I don't know how many NFL teams are going to look at the performance. I know it's only one game, but it just feels like to me Dante Moore would pretty much be the QB1 after another season of college football. But this was all Hoosiers. Really nothing to be said about this game. But Indiana, it's going to be hard for them to beat. I know that they are going to be pretty much going on the road, but that honestly doesn't even worry me at all.
Yeah, I mean, they just kind of seem like the team of destiny at this point. Of course, we'll talk about that matchup in a little bit, and again, more so before the game kicks off next week. But this one was just over from the jump. I mean, the first play of the game was a pick six, like you said, and it didn't get any better for Oregon. So not much to say about this one. I think that this game did represent a big issue that we have in college football right now with the transfer portal timing on both sides. I mean, Indiana, you highlighted the positives. They've already got a Mendoza's replacement lined up and Cooper's replacement lined up. They're sitting there in a suite watching their new team. I don't know how I feel about that. And then on Oregon's end, they were down to like their 5th string running back at times due to injuries and transfer portal departures. You know, I understand the portal's not going anywhere. And on these good football teams, they're probably going to be the ones that play in the portal the most. I mean, they're going to have high quality backups. They're going to want immediate starters and have the money to do it. I just really wish it was after the season. Yeah. I mean, I just think that you finish what you started. Players shouldn't have to feel the pressure to think about next year yet. You know, their job is to be a backup on this Oregon team, and if they stuck around, they might have gotten to play. So that's the issue, is that an injury to a starter can impact you so much more in the portal. I mean, in the playoff than it would just in a regular season game, because you don't really have your backups necessarily. You got 4th and 5th stringers out there playing with your season on the line, and I just can't get behind that. Yeah. And I think it's unfortunate that it happened for Oregon, but it really just wouldn't have mattered because Indiana was the better team, and Indiana looks like they're just going to cruise to a championship.
Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely agree with your opinion. I think a lot of people can attest that the calendar needs to change. It needs to be similar to the NFL. Like you see, like all of the free agency happens like in March, and then you get like the new roster like months before the season. So that really needs to happen like in the off season, like once all the teams are done. The transfer portal opens up right when the national championships concluded. And especially if we get expansion, I feel it's like everything's going to have to get pushed up a week. Because you don't want the national championship, getting too closer to the Super Bowl. Then you're competing with the NFL in the Super Bowl there. So that's just my opinion. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Should the calendar change in this college football landscape? But to be honest with you, I wouldn't really put too much because the NCAA hasn't really done too much in that scape at all. But good win for the Hoosiers, and our matchup is set. We'll get into a little bit of our preview here in just a few moments. Let's dive into some pick'em results. First, we're going to dive into our college football playoff semifinal pick'em results. We only had two games. Wade and I went both 1-1. Look at Chet, perfect 2-0, getting both Indiana and Miami right. He's been picking Miami in the March Madness tournament in the previous years. Now he's picking the Canes in the semifinals, so that worked out pretty well for them. But that's how the standings went in the semifinals. And now your overall Bowl Mania pick'em. All of us have been doing the Bowl Mania over on ESPN from the cricket celebration.
I actually picked Miami there.
Yes, from the cricket celebration bowl to all the way to the national championship. So since we only have one game, this is pretty much finalized at this point. It looks like Wade is going to take the cake in this one. He's at 26-19. I'm right behind him at 23-22. Jacob in third with 22-16. Looks like from his record, either he forgot some bowl games to pick or he just left it blank. I don't know. I guess I'll have to figure that out. And then Chet, 20-25. I guess the upset specialists try to pick some upsets to happen. That didn't work at all. I know that I have Indiana at the moment. I did pick Ole Miss in my Bowl Mania. I originally had Georgia. That blew up in my face. Wade, did you ultimately have Indiana winning it, or did you have to change yours in between?
I had Indiana beating Georgia in the final, but just the way the software works, I was given credit for the Miami win over Ole Miss because I had Georgia beating, or actually no, I had, yes, I got credit for Miami because I had Ohio State beating Georgia. So I think I had Indiana, Ohio State in the final.
All right, so let's go on now to some. Actually, before we get into some more results here, let's go dive back right into our early national championship preview. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, we'll dive into our picks and then more of on this game. But we're going to go early, takeaways and maybe some keys on both sides. Maybe if you want to take one side on Miami, what are their keys to win? But Miami, if you don't know that this game is in Hard Rock Stadium, so Miami is still going to be the quote-unquote visitor since they are the 10 seed. Indiana will be the home team here by Miami. Huge advantage. I mean, we see this multiple times in the Super Bowl. You saw it a couple of years back with the Rams when they took down the Bengals, and even seen it in the college landscape. I know, it's not really a home game, but when LSU won the national championship a couple of years back, in New Orleans, I mean, come on, people, that's pretty much an hour down the road. It's a home game. But I guess if you want to take the Miami or the Indiana side on their keys to win, but the overall favorite right now has to be Indiana. Looking at the sports books, Indiana right now is a 7.5-point favorite in this game. If you look at the ticket prices, good luck. You're going to need at least $5,000 to get into this one. I'm going to be curious to see if we see a lot of crimson in this one. Like I mentioned, obviously, this is in Miami Stadium, so this is definitely going to be a home field advantage for the Miami Hurricanes. So, Wade, take one side, give the keys to this game.
I'll take the underdogs here. I'll take Miami's side and leave you with the number one team. I think for Miami, the key is health. Are they going to get their secondary back? And is that defensive line going to be up to full strength? Because I think if they are, I think talent-wise, Miami might have the more talented roster on paper, going into the season. Now, I'm not saying it's that case right now. Obviously, Miami is hot right now, but Indiana's on a whole nother level. But, if you look at the makeup of this roster, it's very good. They've got a proven veteran quarterback, as does Indiana. So I think Carson Beck can go toe for toe. He's got to limit the mistakes, of course, but he's done that. The interception against Ole Miss was on a tipped pass where he was rushed, so not too concerned there. And then I think they had a fumble. No, that was the Oregon game. But yeah, I trust Carson Beck to make this a competitive game. I don't know that the home crowd is going to be that big of a factor. I think it's a little jiffy that it's in their actual stadium. I hear what you're saying about New Orleans and LSU, and certainly that played to LSU's advantage, but it was in a different city. I mean, this is literally in their home stadium, but we have seen it in the Super Bowl, and this is set 5 or 6 years in advance, so there was no way to know. But I don't know if it's going to be that big of a factor because each team's going to get their allotment. Obviously, Indiana's going to pay it out, and I thought that the Peach Bowl was going to be 50-50 because Oregon usually travels very well, but they certainly didn't, or Indiana controlled the market. So Indiana fans are going to find a way in there. I think it's going to be pretty neutral. I think it really just comes down to Miami's health and if Carson Beck can play like the fifth-year senior he is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those keys. I'm sure there's not going to be too many keys for me because this Indiana team, like I mentioned, it feels like they're going to have to beat themselves at this point.
Yeah.
But this is definitely going to be one of their stiffer tests against the defense because, other than Ohio State, this is going to be the best defense that they have played all season. I think it's only going to come down to limiting the big plays. Either that's from Carson Beck's legs because Carson Beck, he's been, I think, a young passer in the playoff, the past 2 games, but he's been able to use his legs in key spots there. So you definitely got to look at that. And then Mark Fletcher, he's been the RB1 for Miami, so you got to limit some big runs, keep them contained. And on Indiana's offense, trust your Heisman-winning quarterback to make some big plays. And I feel like if Indiana can get off to a hot start as they've had in the playoff, it's going to be an uphill battle for Miami because I just don't think that Miami has that explosive firepower that Indiana has. Nothing against Miami, but what have I seen from them in the playoff? It's been a lot of short passes. It's been a lot of, they're trying to eat up, the clock. Like you saw in the Ole Miss game, they tried to keep that time possession pretty much the whole entire game. They were going on 7-8-minute drives. So that's what Miami's going to do. So if you get limited possessions that Miami's going to force, then you got to trust your playmakers on the outside. And I definitely think that Indiana has the tools on defense to do that. So that's – like I mentioned, Indiana hasn't really shown me too many weaknesses throughout this regular season, but I think that's the main keys for the Hoosiers. So those are your early keys to the game. We'll get into our full preview on next week's show and then give our ultimate pick. So definitely stay tuned to that. But let's go back into some results to one of our favorite segments on here on the show that was introduced here a couple of years back. That's SEC Fantasy season results. SEC Fantasy concluded on last week's show. We both had our quarterfinal teams as well as our whole entire bowl season in the SEC. So I don't have the overall numbers, the total yardage. I just have the wins. So let's go ahead and dive into first the regular season. So the regular season, it was pretty crazy how it started off. It was 6-2 advantage at one point to my name. Wade won 5 in a row to get it to 6-6. And then it ended up 7-7 to finish the regular season. So this is now back-to-back years where this has the same thing has happened. I was up 6-2 last year. Wade came back. He ended up winning SEC Fantasy for the season. And it happened again. So Wade, maybe you need to be kind of Indiana, maybe start off fast and then never let up the gas next season.
At least get myself 2 wins in August and September.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the regular season wins. So we were tied. And the postseason wins, well, this is where SEC Fantasy was won 3-0. So we had 3 separate drafts. We had our college football playoff first round, our college football playoff quarterfinal, like I mentioned, the rest of the SEC bowl games. And I swept that. I think only one time that Wade was able to get over the positives because in last week's show, both of his teams got into the negatives. So 3-0. So overall score was 10-7. So ultimately, I ended up winning that. Wade's epic comeback, got us to this postseason. But ultimately, the dominance, I think that I deserve this one here in 2025. We will see if Wade can come back strong in 2026 to get back on track. But I just think the main key is not get down behind so early on. But you've been proven to show these comebacks. So that is our SEC Fantasy recap for our wins. Now let's dive into our SEC Fantasy Players of the Year. I know that we had our SEC Fantasy Player of the Year award and MVP that went to Oklahoma wide receiver Isaiah Satenga. But I really just wanted to dive into each position because, to be honest with you, the quarterback was pretty simple to me. Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt. The running back, Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri, was neck and neck between Kawan Lacey. You could go with either or. Wide receiver, I know that Satenga ultimately won the MVP award, but it felt like every time we were drafting Chris Brazel, it just felt like an easy 100 yards that we're getting to him. And then the defense, Oklahoma, not only was Oklahoma one of the best defenses in the SEC for overall, but when we were drafting the Sooners, it felt like they were pretty solid. Even in the playoff, too. Like if you picked Oklahoma, it would have been the best defensive pick in the first round. So, Wade, overall takeaways from all of these players, earning, I guess, this honor. I just picked it, but it feel like these three players and one defense were a step ahead of the pack.
Yeah, all very reliable. Kawan Lacey's the obvious name that's missing here, but there's only 3 spots. And,
so will Hardy.
We're focused on yardage for this. A lot of Kawan Lacey's impact, was getting in the end zone. So what's really exciting is we get Ahmad Hardy and Kawan Lacey back next year. They're both sophomores, and they were both in the same running back room for like a month. I think Kawan Lacey probably saw that Hardy was going to be pretty good, so he decided to go get his own at Ole Miss. The rest of them will be moving on. Chris Brazel sat out the bowl game. Tennessee desperately missed him. And Diego Pavia came up just short against Iowa. He was one of the better storylines in the SEC over the last 2 seasons. From there, crazy upset win over Alabama that the sky was falling. Vanderbilt beat Alabama, but then we realized Vanderbilt was actually a pretty good little football team the past 2 years, and Diego was a big part of that. So I think you nailed it. The Oklahoma defense, we expect them to be good next year as well. I mean, Brent Venables, that's his bread and butter. So I haven't seen anything official, but I think Mateer's coming back. So this team really could build on its run. I think they were kind of ahead of schedule. So definitely a good unit. If the offense can kind of turn a page, I mean, Oklahoma could be one of the more well-rounded squads heading into next season.
Yeah, so we'll say goodbye to Diego Pavia and Chris Brazel. Really good season for them overall in SEC fantasy. So in 2026, we'll have some new faces at each position, and then the defenses will remain the same. There are going to be some defenses that piss us off, and defenses that will.
We're keeping that eliminator.
Yes,
defenses. It makes the segment.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is our SEC fantasy recap. But let's dive into just our official 2025 SEC football season in review. We're just going to go through a couple of segments here. We're going to dive into the end of season standings, go through some teams who disappointed, teams who exceeded their expectations, and then we'll do a little bit getting into the 2026 football season, maybe some teams, players we are looking forward to watch this upcoming season. So let's dive into how the end of season standings, and if you had Ole Miss finishing number 1 overall in the SEC, you probably win the lottery, because I don't think a lot of people had Ole Miss finishing number 1. I know Georgia ultimately did win the SEC championship, but this is just overall standings compiled with their playoff finish as well as their SEC overall conference. So as you see on the left, that is their conference. On the right is their overall. So Ole Miss finished at 13-2, 7-1. They definitely show that they were the best team in the SEC, just getting to the semifinal. And overall team build, I mean, their defense wasn't elite as like the Oklahomas and like some of these defense that we've seen in the SEC, but they were definitely good enough. Offense, though, they did not miss a beat, especially with Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, in the preseason, it was all Austin Simmons talk, and by the Kentucky game, that was all washed as he got hurt, and it was Trinidad Chambliss. Georgia, really good season for them, 12-2, 7-1. We had a lot of 7-1 teams. A&M, 11-2, 7-1. They made the playoff, and then our final playoff team, 11-4, Alabama, 7-1 record in the conference. So we did have 4 SEC teams make the playoff. And then moving on down to, I guess, the next tier, if you want to call this, we have our 10-3 teams. Texas, who was the preseason number 1 overall team, fell a little bit short of their expectations. Oklahoma, really good season for them. They made the college football playoff along with the top 4 teams that you see there. So really good season for the Sooners, like you mentioned. Then you get Mateer back, Satinga back. They have a really nice defense coming back as well. So this could be a team right back in the college football playoff. Vandy, they just continue to be the darlings of college football. I would really like to see them in the college football playoff. They were probably one win away. If they would beat Alabama or a team like Texas, then they would probably got in the dance with 11 wins. Missouri and Tennessee were the next 2 teams, 8-5 apiece. Probably 2 teams that fell a little bit short of expectations. LSU, their season imploded on them pretty quickly at 7-6, and then Kentucky, surprisingly, at 5-7. I had them finishing at the bottom, probably like where Arkansas is. But we saw Florida and Auburn 4-8, 5-7. Mississippi State at 5-8, 4-8. South Carolina, then Arkansas bring up the rear at 2-10, 0 wins in the SEC. So you had a lot of surprises at the top, some disappointments at the bottom. We will get into like overall, expectations. But looking at the season standings, what like 1 or 2 teams really stick out to you out of this list?
In a good way?
All right. Well, I guess in a good and a bad way, if you want to go that way.
I think in a good way, A&M, that's a team that finally kind of turned the corner, in my opinion. I know that they fizzled at the end, but Texas was playing their best football at the end of the year, and now we know how good Miami was. That wasn't just a fluke with a lot of wind. So, I think that they're in good shape. And I think that they finally turned a corner. The same could be said about Ole Miss. I don't think either of us had them maintaining the level of success that they had after last season. It kind of felt like, maybe last season was the year to do it. They had Jackson Dart and some really talented members on that defense, but they actually turned a corner defensively. So those 2 stand out to me in a good way, and in a bad way. Probably, I was high on Florida. I thought DJ Lagway was going to be
too. You can't forget about that either.
Yeah. So definitely them, and then I'd say South Carolina. I mean, to go 1-7 in the conference was pretty bad. I mean, they had a very hard schedule, and by about game 5, I think we realized that they were probably going to be the underdog in any SEC game they played. Their only win came against Kentucky, but just the way they lost some of those games, I mean, they weren't really in them. And then they let some games that could have been terrific upsets just slip away for silly reasons, such as blowing a 30-point lead against Texas A&M. And then that Alabama game was definitely winnable too. So I would say the Gamecocks, just kind of a head scratcher. I thought that team was going to kind of be one of the more surprising teams in a good way, but there they are, second to last.
Yeah, I thought South Carolina was going to be like one of those teams that build off of their in-season momentum. I mean, like they were 9-win season. I know that they ended up losing to Illinois, but we know what Illinois does in the postseason. But, I mean, you have Lenore's coming back, Harbor. I mean, you're pretty much going to be having the same thing happen again in 2026. So, like I mentioned last week, if they do 4-8, 5-7, or hell, even 6-6, Shane Beamer, there's no way that he returns as being the head coach. I guess I'll take the good and the bad here. I think I definitely agree with your pick in Texas A&M. I mean, I did not have this team going 11-0 at one point. I mean, Marcel Reed, terrific season for him. Wide receivers was definitely the story of the season. Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver was definitely nice pickups for them. Defense, they definitely had their struggles early on this season, but they really picked it up in the midseason on. So Texas A&M, really nice story for them. I think the future is really bright for them, especially with the talent that they're bringing in the portal as well as the recruiting. Disappointment, I'm going to take Auburn. I know that you did take South Carolina. Auburn, I had them winning like 8 games this year. I really liked, their transfer portal additions, not really just with Jackson Arnold, but bringing in Ashton Daniels. You had some really talent on the offense, Cam Coleman, and then you bring in Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. You bring in Xavier Atkins, who's one of your best defensive players. So your defense was really there. Your offense, once again, crap the bed, and that's why Hugh Freeze is not your head coach anymore. But I definitely think that Auburn, the talent that you're bringing in, you are losing guys like Deuce Knight and Cam Coleman, but you are bringing in Byron Brown, who's a really talented quarterback, probably the best quarterback we are going to see in quite some time at Auburn.
Say that every year.
It's been a lot of mid at Auburn, to be honest with you. But overall, only one win for the Tigers. Definitely a disappointment, along with South Carolina. I feel like that Baylor win was really the defining moment, and that Baylor win didn't really mean anything because Baylor sucked in the Big 12. So overall, disappointment for the SEC. Like I mentioned, third straight year not making it to the national championship. You did get more teams this year compared to 2024 in the college football playoff, and you did have some really like Vandy was a team that could have definitely been in there as well. And then you had some teams like you mentioned, LSU, Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, disappointing the conference this season. So now let's dive into I guess we'll pretty much just keep it on this trend of teams exceeding expectations. So I know that you and I both talked about a number of these teams: Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Vandy, Texas A&M. I did bring in Kentucky and Mississippi State because I don't think we like a lot of people had Kentucky, Mississippi State winning 5 games overall this season, and even getting like one conference win. Like the only team to not get a conference win was Arkansas. So Mississippi State, I know that like they could have even easily been like a 7-win team. I mean, look at the Tennessee and Texas loss. Kentucky, on the other hand, their future is bright. I mean, with Will Stein, I mean, they got hell of good pickups. We will definitely talk about Kentucky and their transfer portal win so far. But other teams, Oklahoma, I think was right on the line with expectations. Texas A&M, same with them. Ole Miss, I think a lot of people just thought that they were not going to be as good as last year's team. And Vandy, probably think that a lot of people thought that they were going to be good, especially with their returning talent, but I don't think that a lot of people had them at 10 wins. So maybe, I know we already lighted on Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Do you want to talk more about Kentucky and Mississippi State in this segment?
Yeah, I think it would be good to highlight those teams. Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that they exceeded expectations, but at the end of the day, Mississippi State still went 1-7 in the conference, and then they gambled it by playing a bowl game, which I think was probably a good move. But then they end up finishing 5-8.
They almost ended their future quarterback's season.
Yeah, but all indications say that he's going to be back and healthy. So I like the optimism surrounding the Bulldogs. Kentucky, I mean, I think they did exceed expectations. We had them at the very bottom. They got on a nice run at the end, but then ended up still firing Mark Stoops, which was bizarre. Probably the right move, though. I mean, I think they have a chance to bring in a young offensive-minded coach. I think that team needed a little shake-up.
That offense was stuck in the Stone Age.
Yeah. I mean, Benny Snell wasn't walking on campus anytime soon. That power run game with him and Chris Rodriguez and all those guys kind of carried Kentucky through their era. So they need a new identity. They're getting one. Yeah, I felt like those teams rose from the bottom, and that's why you're seeing them here on the exceeded expectations.
Now let's go on now to the teams who fell short of those expectations. We do have a lot of heavy hitter programs. I did put Texas because they were national championship or bust. They were the preseason number 1. I mean, overall, it was a good season for them. I mean, still 10 wins. This team was expected to be in the college football playoff. LSU, well, there was a lot of people. Like, they even had Lee Corso, the first show, pick them to win the national championship against Penn State. Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit picked them to win the national championship. But LSU, another team in the SEC who fired their head coach, 7-6, ain't going to do it at LSU. And then Missouri, this was a team, they finished 8-5, good season in Missouri terms, but this easily could have been like expectations team, like 10 wins easily. Florida, like I mentioned, preseason top 15. Well, that didn't last pretty much long because they got their doors blown out by Miami in week number 3, and they started off very poorly. Same with South Carolina and Auburn. These are all 1-7 teams in the SEC. I know we both hit it on South Carolina and Auburn, so we could definitely talk about the top portion. I know in the preseason you spotted Texas. You in the same scenario, you had Texas, a team in the preseason, falling short of expectations. So you definitely hit that one on the head. So talk about the top four teams and how their season ultimately crumbled on them. I guess I know Texas season didn't really crumble, but LSU and Florida, well, a season to forget.
Yeah, no, Texas is in the good category overall,
Yes,
but
they're at the top. Same with Missouri. The rest of the teams, no.
yeah, absolutely. But this is kind of what I was predicting for Texas. I just thought that yes, if everything clicked, this team absolutely should be a playoff team, but it was a lot on the shoulders of a first year starting quarterback and a new receiving core, a new offensive line. I just thought there was a lot of question marks for this team. Um, a lot of talent, but it all had to hit at once, and it had to hit right off the bat because you go up to Columbus, you lose that game, you score 10 points. I mean, it's just a momentum killer. You have coaches questioning things, you have players questioning themselves. Um, so that just was not ideal for them, but they started gelling and they played really good down the stretch. They beat Texas A&M handedly, and they won their bowl game. So I think Texas is going to be all right going forward. Um, but these other teams, yeah, I mean, just not the kind of season you wanted to see. Florida, um, it was inevitable that Billy Napier was going to be on his way out unless they just went 8-4 or something or better this year. And DJ Lagway, I mean, at times looked like he shouldn't have even been the starter, which I had him as my preseason player of the year. So
Yeah,
got that one
well,
wrong.
and Nussmeier, that didn't pan out either.
Yeah. So then LSU, same story. I mean, Lagway and Nussmeier were two of the proven quarterbacks in the conference. You thought that they were going to look polished and in command of their offenses, but time after time, these teams and Missouri were three of the lower scoring offenses in the conference. So while they did each have good defenses, it wasn't enough to bail out some really, really bad offense. Missouri got hit with the injury bug at their quarterback position, so it wasn't quite the same scenario as LSU and Florida had with their proven guys. But I think you could definitely argue that Bo Prabula did not pan out to the level that they thought he would as another veteran quarterback. And with some injuries to him, they were put in a really bad spot with a third string true freshman quarterback. And I think that's why they quickly went and landed Austin Simmons. They want a guy that has at least proven in an SEC camp that he can come out as a starter. And I think that's going to be a good fit for him. So I think all these teams have a chance to climb out of the gutter, probably about in the order that they're listed in terms of likelihood to do so. Auburn continues to spend, so you would hope they would make the biggest jump. But just it's going to be hard to get a read on these teams going into next year too. I'm curious to see how the rest of the portal plays out and how we end up ranking these teams come August.
Yeah, for sure. So that is the teams who fell short and exceeded expectations. And now we're going to dive into more of question base. So if you want to answer these questions at home, definitely go for it. You can play along with us. Let's dive into a little game. We're going to go continue on with recapping the SEC season. So the first one, what was the storyline of the 2025 SEC season? That could either be a preseason storyline that maybe fell apart early on, or it could be a coach firing. Or what do you think was the ultimate storyline here of this season?
I think it was the Lane Kiffin saga, and we hadn't seen it. We had seen coaches jump from SEC job to SEC job, like Dan Mullen did, Will Muschamp, that kind of thing. But we never saw it happen mid-season, and we never saw a guy jump from like a top 5 team to an unranked team. So I think that was, to me, what we're going to remember from the season, especially since Ole Miss ended up really turning it on in the playoff and having one of their best seasons ever.
Well, I'm going to keep it with the Rebs. I'm going to go with Trinidad Chambliss being the storyline
Yeah.
of this season. I mean, like I mentioned, we all like our preview was like, who's going to be one of our top quarterbacks, and Austin Simmons was on there. And well, we got 2 games of him. He got hurt against Kentucky. Then we saw Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, coming from D2 level, you still know what you're going to get. Coming from Ferris State. I mean, Ferris State is a dynasty in their own. I mean, they won a national championship once again this season. That's like 4 of the last 6 in the D2 level. But Trinidad Chambliss, like even the road games, like didn't even face him. Like that Georgia, like that first Georgia game is really when I saw like he can really like ultimately if it wasn't for Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, Trinidad probably would have been up there in the Heisman discussion as well. Honestly, if he would have got a full season, but like I mentioned, like this Ole Miss team just wasn't expected to go this far, and for a D2 quarterback coming from Ferris State to take him to the promised land, that's got to be the storyline of the season. You can also bring up the overall coaching carousel chaos that we had in the conference. I mean, it all started with Billy Napier, and then the next week it was Brian Kelly, and then you had Arkansas. Actually, it was Arkansas the first one. Then you had Florida, LSU, Auburn. Who knows if we're going to have this in 2026, but I guess we will have to find out. That is our top storylines of this season. And now let's dive into which preseason player who had all the hype heading into this 2025 season. Which one do you think tops the cake that failed to deliver?
I gotta go with Garrett Nussmeier and LSU. I think as a whole, I think that situation was probably a little bit more disappointing than Sellers in Carolina, just because the expectations were a little bit higher.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go away from a quarterback. I'm just going to go with Ryan Williams because he has
Yeah,
all the
that's
pure
true.
talent, and he's what like the wide. He's not even the wide receiver 3 on this team. It was Jeremy Bernard, Horton. I know he was one of their top wide receivers. Now he's going to Texas A&M. They would, even like a true freshman have a better season than Ryan Williams. It just hasn't really panned out. I know that even last season he had like one good game, like have 100 yards. And the next week, he had 2 catches for 18 yards. Like he just cannot put it together. I just don't know if the offense that he's been in. I mean, the 2 quarterbacks. I mean, Jalen Milrow. You could say whatever about him, and then Ty Simpson. He just hasn't lived up to being a 5-star recruit, to be honest with you. So Garrett Nussmeier, obviously at the top of this list. DJ Lagway and Lenore Sellers did not have the seasons that we hoped for. But I think that is pretty clear and dry that Garrett Nussmeier overall, I mean, even in the nation looking at it, like the quarterbacks this season and the preseason were terrible. I mean, Kate Klubnik did not have that great of a season.
Yeah.
Drew Raller got hurt in game number 3. I don't even know what else quarterbacks that really didn't pan out. I think that's mainly all of them. But it feels like Garrett Nussmeier overall was the number one disappointment because, yeah, I mean, if you're an LSU fan or even if you're an SEC fan, you knew exactly what happened throughout the whole entire season. Like, was he going to play? Is he injured? Is he really injured? I don't know, but we will see where he lands in the NFL draft. But coming back this season ultimately is going to cost him because he's probably going to be a day 3 guy at best here in the upcoming NFL draft in April. But let's go away from some disappointments. Let's keep it on to now to which game was the most season defining in the SEC. It could be a week 1 game. It could be a late season game. Which game do you think like really was defining? It not only had to be for both teams in this game, but what ultimately think was the game that changed the landscape of the SEC?
I think I keep coming back to the Oklahoma-Alabama game. I don't know if it was season defining in the sense that they ended up both playing in the college football playoff, but I think that was kind of our first look at this Oklahoma team, and we're like, oh man, like they're legit because they went into Tuscaloosa and shut them down. So the reward was that they had to play them again. It's always hard to beat a team twice, but yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of like one of my biggest takeaway games from the season.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a game where the winner vaulted, soared the rest of the season, and the loser they started their demise. That's the LSU Ole Miss game. I
That's a
believe
good
that
point.
happened in early October. It was an early season game. LSU was undefeated. They were a top five team. They were rolling. Ole Miss, I think they were undefeated as well. Maybe they had a one loss. I can't keep up. I don't know.
No,
No,
they
they
were
did not have a
undefeated.
loss. They were both undefeated. So that's right. Their one loss didn't come until that Georgia game, but it just felt like the winner of that game was going to be set up for the rest of the season, and that was the truth. I did not see like LSU even losing this game. Like, okay, that's just one loss. I mean, they still have an elite roster on paper, but that blew up right in our face. If you're an LSU fan, you probably knew by that Louisiana Tech game that the season was going to be over pretty quickly. As the Tigers, well, a couple of weeks later, they got Texas A&M came into their home field, blew the doors off of them. They lost to Vandy. They lost a lot of games down the stretch after that game. They fired their head coach, fired their offense coordinator, and that's why where you're at the moment. In that win for Ole Miss, they really never looked back after that point because that really started the run of Trinidad Chambliss. So I think overall that was the most season defining. I mean, you had one team go to the tippy top and the other team falling off to the face of the earth. So to me, that is what defines a season for both teams. So now let's go on to our next question. And this is going to be now to 2026. So what one or maybe two, if you want to bring up multiple SEC teams, should we be keeping an eye on here in 2026?
I'm gonna go back to my team to keep an eye on for 2025, and that's Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I feel like this team's story is kind of unwritten. Are they gonna continue that momentum and be a powerhouse? I think they've been wise in the transfer portal. Can Marcel Reed make a big jump, or is he gonna fall into the likes of Garrett Nussmeier and Lenore Sellers this year and be a disappointment? I mean, just because a guy's coming back and he's got experience doesn't mean he's going to take the league by storm. So, I think that they have all the pieces, but can they put it together? Because they almost did this year, but then they really did fall flat at the end.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Kentucky. I mean, the way that they've been the guys that they're bringing in, the transfer portal and Will Stein, the offensive schemes that he's going to be able to draw up, coming from Oregon, being offense coordinator. It just feels like this is what Kentucky's been missing. Like the defense has been there for the past couple of years under Mark Stoops. And if you can get a really solid quarterback, I know you are losing Cutter Boley, but you're in, a race with a lot of these quarterbacks that can really start away
Notre Dame
from
back
you.
up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that Kentucky, I think that's like one of the teams who could really rise, like being at one of the bottom teams. I mean, they won one game. Like if Kentucky goes 8-4, 7-5, to me that is an ultimate win for Will Stein. I think that is my team to keep an eye on. I wasn't really keeping an eye on him at all in 2025. I was just throwing him in the garbage. But I think that under Will Stein, I just feel like this is going to be a complete flip on offense. I know that Joe Sloan is going to be the offense coordinator. You're going to see a lot of bubble screens and wide receiver screens. I just think that having a young offensive-minded guy like Will Stein is really what Kentucky needs to bolster this roster for 2026. So now let's go on to the other side of the spectrum. What SEC team do you think, in your opinion, is going to take a step back in 2026?
I think it's going to be Vanderbilt. I mean, I hate it because I'd like to see them continue. But right now, it seems like their plan is to roll out a true freshman 5-star and Jared Curtis. And I just kind of see the Texas situation here where I don't think he's going to be bad, but you're putting your entire stock on the line with a guy who's never started a college game, let alone an SEC game. So I think that team takes a step back. I think they're more in that like 6-6, 7-5 range.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Vanderbilt. I guess I'll just go with another team. I think that another team that I don't think, is just a lock right now to make the college football playoff, that's Oklahoma. I mean, you just look through their whole entire season. There was a lot of close wins that they got. And, like in the NFL, you see this, like you go from close wins one year to the next year, you're like 5-12, like the Washington Commanders were this year. But I just think that Oklahoma, like their offense, just continues to worry me. Like down this, like even the whole entire season, you can bring up John Mateer's injury. Ultimately, like he was healthy in the college football playoff. I mean, they went up 17-0. You just didn't really see him ever again in that second half. So their offense worries me. I think that their defense is going to be able to keep up with them. But adding on another SEC conference game, and then you still have Michigan. I know that you do get them at home, but Michigan's going to be another talented team under Kyle Whittingham, especially. So I don't think Oklahoma is a team that I'm just penciling in my 12-team bracket for next season. I think they could like easily take a step back. Like I'm not saying they're going to like fall off the face of the earth, but they could go back to like 8-4, 9-3, just miss out on the playoff. So I'm not like saying that Oklahoma is going to be a very bad football team, but I think they are going to take a step back and not be a college football playoff team next season. So that is our question base. We will definitely have a lot of time, as we head into the off season and into the preseason of the 2026 campaign to talk more about our teams. We won't get our way too early SEC championship picks at the moment. We're going to wait for this transfer portal and spring practice and all this. We don't want to look too stupid here.
We don't have all the cards.
Yeah, when it's only January, I mean, we don't want to say like Vanderbilt and Kentucky is going to make the SEC championship. We look like complete fools. But now let's move on to the hot topics, which is pretty much transfer portal news. The first one is one of the top quarterbacks in the portal class, former Auburn quarterback Deuce Knight, announced earlier today that he is going to be committing to Ole Miss. So Trinidad Chambliss, it was reported earlier in the week that his waiver has been denied by the NCAA. Ole Miss is going to try to appeal. We'll see how that goes down. But Deuce Knight, I mean, this is a solid backup plan if Trinidad Chambliss does not return for a sixth season. You saw his potential like down the stretch for Auburn. Ole Miss. So we'll see what they retain. As you can see at the bottom, they're retaining one of their top running backs. We'll see what wide receivers they will retain. Maybe get some portal wide receivers as well. But what do you think about the addition of Deuce Knight taking his talents to the Rebels?
I think it's a good move. I mean, I think that speaking of teams that might take a step back, Ole Miss, definitely a team I thought about. And not that they're going to fall off the face of the earth, but this is the best season in their program history. Now that the season's over, Pete Golding's going to kind of implement things his way. I think there's an adjustment period, so I think it's wise for Ole Miss to get a guy that could potentially play 3 years for you if you really wanted him to. I'm not saying he's going to, and maybe he's one and done. I mean, it's just you never know in college football nowadays. But I think it's good to go get a guy that can kind of grow with your team. A mobile quarterback. We saw Trinidad Chambliss make a lot of plays with his legs. I don't know that Deuce Knight has some of that arm talent that Trinidad has, but I think it will come with time. So I think this is a good fit for Ole Miss. Definitely a guy that I was kind of hoping LSU would be in on.
Yep, we have another Auburn transfer here, one of their top wide receivers in the portal class, Cam Coleman, taking his talents to the 40 acres and joining the Texas Longhorns. So we did have two other SEC teams in the mix for Coleman. You had Texas A&M and Alabama. They were two heavy pursuits, but Texas, they're all in on this upcoming season. I mean, this is going to be one of the best offenses in the SEC, in my opinion, especially with their two wide receivers now in Coleman and Wingo. They did lose their top two running backs, but I think they're going to be pretty set, especially with what Chandler was able to provide in that bowl game against Michigan. So Cam Coleman entering this offense along with Arch Manning. It feels like this Texas team, like I mentioned, is going to be a national championship or bust. It feels like for the second year in a row.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to spend and bring in all the pieces.
You can even say like 3 years in a row this point.
Yeah. And especially at receiver, I feel like they always try to make a splash move there. Matthew Golden worked out quite well. Xavier Worthy was a homegrown talent. So they have some recent success. Adonai Mitchell was a good ad from Georgia. So I think this is a good fit for Cam Coleman. We knew that Texas was going to make some moves when 2 guys that had 400 plus receiving yards for them were basically told to transfer. So I wouldn't be surprised if they add another big name or two before it's all said and done. But this gives Arch Manning his presumed top target.
Well, we will stay on the Texas train this time, though. One of their running backs leaving. We did have Trey Wisner. He's going to Florida State. I don't know why you went to FSU, but good luck to Trey Wisner. I definitely enjoyed him watching him every Saturday in the SEC, but we will see how he does with the Seminoles. But now, former Texas running back C.J. Baxter is going to Kentucky. You don't see many big names going to Kentucky. This is why I am so locked in to see what this team can do on 2026. So big ad for the Cats. And Wade, I think I may be joining you on the Big Blue Train heading into 2026.
You can have them. No, I think that is a good ad.
To be honest with you.
I kind of thought South Carolina might be in on one of those guys. Definitely a team that could use an upgrade at running back. That wasn't a position they addressed last season either. But Kentucky, I mean, they always address the running back room, and recently it's been via the transfer portal. But one thing about Kentucky is they're always going to have a good running back. CJ Baxter should be next in line there. Oregon under Will Stein has really ran the ball efficiently as well. So I think it's going to continue to be a big part of their game, and they went and got their guy.
And finally, we do have a return out of all like the going and going out.
Imagine that.
Yeah, Ole Miss running back Quan Lacey has announced his return for the 2026 season. That is definitely a big retention for this Rebels offense, especially adding a guy like Deuce Knight. This is definitely going to be an offense. I think it's going to take a little bit of a step back. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, if he does return, then forget all that I said. But Kawan Lacey is going to be a nice return not only for Ole Miss, but for SEC fantasy rosters.
Yeah, for sure. Gives us somebody that we know we can make a solid prediction about going into next year. I think we can pick the top 2 running backs next year.
Yeah, Todd Hardy and Kawan Lacey returning. I mean, we have Harlan Berry coming back too. I mean, the SEC running back class next year is going to be pretty damn solid. I mean, C.J. Baxter, I know, is going to be in a new uniform, but that's going to be like probably one of the best RB. I mean, he's going to be like the really true RB1. Like he's been that 1A, 1B to Trey Wisner for the past couple of seasons. I'll be interested to see what obviously we know what Kawan Lacey can do, but I'll be curious to see what C.J. Baxter does in like a true bell cow situation in Kentucky.
Yeah. I think at Texas they had to split carries with 2 or 3 guys. So it'll be interesting to see both of those guys in a standalone environment and to see how well they do. And to see who is Texas's running back.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have like a lot of like transfer portal news. Tennessee got a big commit with edge rusher out of Penn State, Chaz Coleman. That is a nice addition for the Volunteers. DJ Lagway, a Florida quarterback. Looks like he is turning to go to Baylor. That's not official at the moment. He's still taking visits. LSU picked up a quarterback just over an hour ago from Elon. We will see the Tigers. They're going to be adding another quarterback because they now only have 1 quarterback on the roster. They are bringing in someone from high school, Peyton Houston, who is going to have a lot of potential as well. So a lot of our SEC representatives are going to be busy in the transfer portal. Ole Miss just getting started because their portal is now open, so you're seeing some players leaving. But Ole Miss, along with LSU, has been at the top of the transfer portal class. And even Dabo's getting into it. I saw Dabo got himself a transfer portal. I think it was one of the top running backs in the class. But we're going to definitely have a lot more transfer portal news. I'm sure we'll have more additions for next week's show, so we'll continue keeping track of that before the transfer portal window closes on January 16th. But that's going to be it for this week's edition of SEC Talk. We'll have one more football show for you, and that's we're going to turn our attention to our other sports. We'll have our SEC basketball. We mainly just focus on the SEC tournament and March Madness. Nothing against the regular season, but that is just the most exciting time of the year. And then baseball will be ramping up here in the middle of February, so we'll have a little bit of content for you as well. So we're not going away just yet. We will have one more football show, so definitely tune in to that. That'll be either next Sunday or Monday night. So definitely keep track of that. But I appreciate everybody for tuning into tonight's show, and we will see you all right here next time on SEC Talk. So long for now.